Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm Tom Shellcross, licensed agent with Second City Real Estate. With me as always is Mark Ainley, founder and owner of 𝗣𝗏𝗃 Realty. Mark, how we doing over there?
All right. I had a funny dream and you were in it last night. So obviously this week.
Say no more.
That's funny. But Bree and John Kasman gave us our topic to talk about for the Midwest Real Estate Summit here in May 6th and May 7th. But they gave us the topic. But in the dream, I called you up freaking out. I'm like, dude, they're asking us to talk about derivatives and how they affect the Chicago market based on the economy and Bangladesh. Like this whole crazy topic. And I was calling you like, dude, we have no clue. Why are we being asked this? And you're like, Mark, don't worry. We got this. I'll just whisper in your ear as we go and you'll know exactly what to say. And I walked away in the dream like, oh man, that's cool. It's all right, cool. We got this, not a problem. But I woke up, I'm like, man, I must have a lot of confidence in Tom. Like I'm dreaming about like him just kind of BSing us through a presentation at a pretty awesome event. So I don't know, I thought it was funny. I woke up appreciating, I guess, my confidence I have in you. So
I love it. And I love that I'm just whispering in your ear in your dreams.
Can you picture us on stage? Can you picture us on stage doing that? That'd be really awkward and weird. So, but anyways, anyone listening, Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit, you could go on straightupchicagoinvestor.com and register, buy your tickets now, May 6th and May 7th. You do get a discount if you enter the code podcast. I believe you save like $100 or something like that. So check that out on our website. One other thing I want to bring up to you is I was listening to, when I was jogging on Sunday, the podcast. You got to listen to this, the 𝗥𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 podcast. I haven't listened to it in a while, but a topic popped on there, and the title of the episode was "Don't Do Dumb Shit." I'm like, I got to listen to this one. So I listened to it, and his podcast, one of the things I got away from listening to is because they're usually a couple hours long. But
they're like 3 hours. They're insane.
I know, but it went through. It was such a great episode. It was talking about just all the stuff that we do that inhibits our growth. You know, and it dives into alcohol, dives into ego, it dives into a whole bunch of cool stuff that, I don't know. It's just probably a good episode that I know you'll appreciate, and I'm sure our listeners will appreciate too.
Cool. Kind of tied in there. We're at the bookstore a week ago. I saw he's got a bunch of children's stuff out there.
I know, my kids,
He's got like the Warrior Kid. He's got all this stuff for kids books. I was like, oh man, this is content I got to start bringing to the household here.
I have all the books. I have his protein. I've eaten the cereal, which I'm not that crazy about, but I've bought a little of everything off his little stores.
Nice. Cool, man. All right. What do we got for the housing provider tip?
All right. So we're actually kind of probably past that time of the year, but I just want to keep this in mind because I'm getting people that are calling me up about property management, and they're talking about lease renewals, and they're like, yeah, I got to give them a few week notice or a 30-day notice. And that's really changed for most of Chicago. So if you're in Cook County, you have to now give 60-day notice if your tenant's been there 3 years or less. And if you're over there over 120 days, you're giving 4 months notice. So you really have to plan for your renewals or the people that you want to move out. And we can link to the how it works if you don't meet those timelines. But it's just something to be very conscious of in planning. And especially if you're buying a building. I know I've brought this up before. If you're buying a building and you plan on kicking everyone out or kicking one of the tenants out so you can redo the unit, you have to give them a certain amount of time. So you got to work that into your carry costs, work that into whatever you need to figure out for your numbers when you're trying to move residents out. So yep, keep that in mind. Your time renewals 60 and 120 days. You know, for us, even for like, we do best practice even just for DuPage County. We just kind of give everyone, we kind of follow the same kind of standard, and it just kind of helps us stay ahead of all of our renewals. So it's been something that we've adopted across the 6 counties.
Yeah. And that's one of those rules I don't really, I don't have a problem with, like, let these people get their life in order. If their renewal's going up $100 and that's going to break it for them, it gives them the time to find something else, and you guys can each work through it, right? Like, I don't know. That's one that I don't complain about.
Yeah.
All right. Our guest today. So I actually met him at a meetup about a year ago. So again, a friendly reminder, get to meetups, meet people. Some of you may have spoke with him. He was at our 200th episode last month. He was also referenced on Ben Sussman's episode 202. He's the founder and owner of Beyond Legacy Homes. He's the owner of 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 Cafe, which is opening on 47th Street. When he's not doing real estate, he's a violent crime detective for CPD. Lifelong tie to back of the yards, and this is going to be a great deep dive into that neighborhood today. So without further ado, Ignacio Gonzalez, welcome to the show. Ignacio, how are we doing today?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Doing well.
We were pumped to have you, man. We spoke last week, and I hung up the phone. I was like, dude, that should just be our episode. I wish I just would have recorded it. That would have been it right there. So let's start here. Like, we got a lot to cover for back of the yards, but you just have deep ties to that community. how did that all start for us? Talk to us about just back of the yards 20, 30 years ago.
Sure. You know what? So I was born in Back of the Yards back in 1975. I was first generation Mexican American, and I was there when it was transitioning from predominantly Lithuanian Polish neighborhood into a Mexican neighborhood. So first born in the U.S. from both my mom's and father's side, and we were born in Back of the Yards.
All right, so born there, raised there. I know your uncle had a building. You were helping out when you were age 10, 12. Talk to us about just how you got started and saying like, oh man, this is something that I could potentially do down the road.
So when I was a kid, my father bought a 4-unit apartment building. He's constantly working on it. And as other of my parents' relatives started coming, they started buying buildings, and we were helping one another out fix the properties. And I remember one of my uncles had purchased a 6-unit building, and every Friday he would get after work, everybody would get together. He'd buy a 12-pack of beer, and then we'd be working on a property from a very young age. I didn't have any other siblings or any other younger cousins, so I'm hanging out with all my uncles fixing properties.
All right, so what do you know what your father bought the 4-unit for? What year is this? Like, let's talk.
I absolutely remember. I remember I actually brokered his second property at the age of 12 because his English was kind of broken. But so the first building, the 4-unit, he bought, I was about less than 7 years old, for $23,500.
Man, now I'm assuming that's still not in the family, but what does a 4-unit for back of the yards go for now?
It's still in the family.
Oh, it's still in the family. All right.
It's still in the family. I manage my father's property. And that building right now, I think would probably go for somewhere around $350,000 to $375,000.
Big pop.
But think about if you did the math on how much rent was collected over that time. Like that.
It definitely paid off the $23,500.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the cap, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, before going further, because not everybody that listens is familiar with all the neighborhoods. Give me a breakdown of kind of the borders of what Back of the Yards is made up of.
Sure. Back of the Yards, so we have borders McKinley Park, Canaryville, Bridgeport, a little bit of Bridgeport. To the south is Inglewood, and then Gage Park to a little bit of the west. It starts on 39th Street. It goes all the way to about 55th Street. It goes from Halsted to about Western Avenue.
Gotcha. And it's got that little carve out of Canaryville, which is separate but similar, I guess.
Yeah.
So just a side note for my own knowledge, so if this is going all the way there, like Canaryville's tiny then, because it's just the highway to this, right? Just go running east and west.
Well, you know what? Like Canaryville, Bridgeport, we all claim the stockyards, right? And Back of the Yards, we all claim the stockyards. So, and most of that, it's all factories. Nobody really lives there, but I think we're all fighting, and a lot of the people that worked in the stockyards would move into or live in the surrounding areas. So the stockyards, it's not a residential area. There's still a lot of factories there. There's a huge revitalization happening on a lot of the old stockyards. I remember when I was a kid, and a lot of those stockyards closed down and really affected our communities.
Yep. And for our listeners, where are the stockyards located? Like, give us a rough idea of some intersections.
So it's from 39th, and they go all the way to 47th from Halsted to Ashland. And when I was growing up, there was, I don't know how many slaughterhouses were actually there. But the reason the Back of the Yards is called the Back of the Yards is because during the slaughterhouses, the stench would travel west, and it would hit us in Back of the Yards. So for a long period of time, in the summertime, we would still have the stench and the smell of all the slaughterhouses just east of Back of the Yards.
It's amazing. Like, you go back to, I watched some of these little documentaries in between call it 1880 and 1920, like how nasty, disgusting, dirty the city was, and how little like government insight to like what's the right thing to do. Like, there's just this city was just cranking out production, GDP, and we didn't account for anything. And that's one of the things what you're explaining is like they just didn't give a crap about it.
Yeah, the sanitation was brutal for a long period of time. Even now, when I first moved back and purchased a property on 45th and Laughlin, the soil here, they recommend that you don't grow anything because the soil still has a great it has a lot of lead, a lot of zinc, and that's from the smoke from all the burning from back in the 1920s, 30s, and up until even the 1980s.
That's crazy. So still getting affected 100 years ago from all this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right. So you mentioned coming back to the neighborhood. So, we left off, you helped out your uncle, you're growing up in the area, you decided to pursue this career in law enforcement. What brought you back to 𝗥𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, right? Like why come back? Why this neighborhood? What was attractive when we have, Chicago's very diverse. Why come back here?
Yeah. So, you know what, I grew up, I went to the Marine Corps, and it was the first time that I left the city, and it opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I came back from the Marine Corps. I went to college. I majored in teaching the history. I always wanted to be a school teacher. And then from that point, I ended up becoming, getting into law enforcement. I really enjoyed it. I always thought I'd go back to teaching, and I have taught in different ways, law enforcement. And then even I took a private contract in Iraq. I was training Iraqi police. But when you're
teaching today, brother. You're teaching today.
Yeah, this counts. Put this on the resume, man.
Yeah. So I've seen how communities have transformed and changed throughout the whole city. As a young kid, my father worked in those lunch trucks, catering trucks, and he'd travel around the city, and he would sell food to construction sites. So I remember when Ravenswood was getting developed, the South. If I could tell you stories as a kid, how much some of those properties were going for when they were first being developed. And I came back. I was living in the West Loop. I was the first person to move into Roosevelt Square. It's across the street from where St. Ignatius is at, 1232 South Blue Line. And they gave me a better deal. They said, listen, you know what, this property's still being developed. I want to, do I want to be the first to move in there? They gave me a discounted price. I had a pit bull. So I was like, you know what, I don't care. Let me go. I'll feel safe. I'll be okay. And so I was living in the West Loop, Roosevelt Square. I saw that whole place start getting developed, and there were some issues. And sometimes when you're purchasing a phase one property, you don't know what you're going to end up getting. So I moved in there. I really did enjoy it, but when that whole place started getting developed, it was just something in me. I was always coming back to the old neighborhood. My father was in a point where he was retiring, so I'm still managing his properties. Slowly, I'm always in the neighborhood. I'm playing dominoes with my uncles every Friday, hanging out with these guys. They're still freaking helping one another fix some of the apartment buildings that they have. And then I just, I saw an opportunity. I saw some of the changes that are happening. They call it transformational energy of a neighborhood. And I've seen it throughout the city. And I'm biased when I say this, but I really felt that my community was about to change, so I wanted to be a part of it.
That's
Transformational energy. I love that. That's momentum.
So let's talk about the first building then. So you said, hey, I want to be part of this. You start looking for buildings. Give us a time frame here, and were there specific areas within 𝗥𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 that you were looking, like north or south of X Street?
So I'll tell you, I came and I saw the plant, which is a business incubator that redeveloped what used to be an old slaughterhouse, and they brought this mindful business place to the plant Chicago, which is at 1400 West 46th Street. So I go in there and I see this incredible brewery that's there, Weiner Brewery. I see a vegan ice cream shop that opened up in this incubator. And I was like, wow, what's happening? There's a vegan ice cream shop in 𝗥𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, which just blew my mind, right? And I said, there's some change happening. There's something happening. So I reach out to a buddy of mine who's a real estate agent, and I say, do me a favor, see if something's around the plant. So I'm just east of Ashland, and it's a little pocket before you get to the actual the factories in 𝗥𝗲𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 from the east side of Ashland. So a buddy of mine reached out to me. He's like, dude, this is a complete gut job. This is right up your alley. All your uncles could help you out with the build out of the property. And I ended up buying the property, started fixing it. I hire all the local guys. I know the quality of the workmanship and the craftsmanship of the people in this community. I know what they do. I've seen them. And I just brought local guys here and started working on the property. I gutted it all the way down to the beams, and I rebuilt the property from the ground up, and that was my first complete gut job.
Well, just you made it sound very easy, so I just want to break that down a little. You grew up with the uncles, the family, the neighborhood, the pretty handy, crafty group you're around always. But now you're taking a building down to like its original bones and putting it back together. I mean, there's pricing, there's quality, there's material. Like that's nothing to sneeze at. Like that's a huge project. Like was it just the confidence in the people that were your network that were going to screw you? Like that's a big deal, I guess. Yeah. Kind of tell us a little more what you're thinking about at that time.
I'll tell you, I didn't know any of that, right? I didn't know. I mean, everybody was telling me what was your budget, what was this. I was like, man, I got a good deal on the property. I had some money saved up. I've purchased a property. I said, I'm going to take it slow. I'll build it. I'll take it slow. But yes, it was a far greater endeavor than I ever thought it was going to be. I was really blessed with some of the people that came, the demo guy, and I just started asking around. And I think, we talked a little bit about this before this, about my intuition. And I've really trusted my intuition, whether it was in law enforcement, the Marine Corps, private contract. And I really trusted the individuals. A lot of these guys, I would feel it out. I got pricing on, and I went step by step. First, let's do all the demo work. So we did the demo work. And now I have an empty shell. It's like, it's an open canvas, right? There's something in me that I love, and it's part of the yin and the yang. I love to destroy, right? I get to destroy a building all the way down to its bare bones. And then you get to rebuild, right? The creative side comes out in you. And then we started little by little. And actually, this is here. This is, well, you guys can see it, but this is the property that I went down to the bare bones, and we started rebuilding. And I really wanted to make it my own. So it was a slow process. It took me, as money was coming in, I wasn't getting any loans off of this. I maxed out all my credit cards. I pretty much went broke trying to build this property up. But I was all in. After all said and done, I paid $250 all in for this property. And what was heartbreaking, this was in 2017, 2018. When I refinanced, at the time, the property appraised for $165 or $169, something like that. I was only able to pull 80% of that. But it was my home. I made it my own. And I was really proud of where I was. And then I had another apartment downstairs. I got a great tenant. So that kind of helped alleviate some of my payments.
So what I took away from there, though, is even though you basically have a house hack and you were over what you planned on, you're over what the market will allow you to be if you try to sell it or something like that. But your numbers, what you had into it, offset by your rent you have coming down in there, it just works for you, and it's gonna be a long-term scenario where between the money you'll make, the reduced living costs you'll have, and then the ability you got time on your side. That's what makes this make sense for you.
Yeah. Man, but let's talk about this. So 2 questions. So first off, what is it worth today? Because then you've had this reappraised at some point. Where are you at now?
Yeah, you know what? I was really worried during COVID what's going to happen with the housing market, but I reappraised it in 2021 and it appraised for $295. So
we're back above up in the black.
Yeah. Right. So I pulled $90,000 more on a line of credit, and allowed me to purchase some other properties.
Got it. So walk me through the mindset here, though, because you just put your heart and soul in this building, right? Like, gutting a building is not easy. You do all this work, all the hiccups, all the BS that goes into it, and you come out underwater on day one, right? Like, so
yeah.
How'd you keep going?
That's the
one that, when you did appraisal, what was the initial,
heartbroken.
Yeah, curse word that comes out of your mouth?
Well, part of it is like, well, you know what, this is a little bit of anger, right? The banking institution, and so this is me, right? This is the banking institution has no idea what they're talking about. And I know my neighborhood. I know the value. I was able to get for one bedroom $1,000 in rental income for a one bedroom, which was unheard of in back of the yards. And even a lot of the people were like, you're never going to get that for a one bedroom in 2017, 2018. Yeah, I got that easily. And I do believe if you provide quality work, quality apartments, great people are going to come. So yeah, I was heartbroken. I thought I'd have enough money and resource, but I knew at that time, I was like, you know what, the market's going to catch up. I know things are going to change. They're going to see the value in this property in the future. So, like you said, I'm in my house. I made it the way I wanted. I'm very comfortable here. Still am. And I was really proud of the work.
So how did you get the courage to do the next one, right? You go through this, it takes a while for the market to catch up, but in the interim, how are you like, you know what? Let's run it back.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. So there was a woman that lives across the street, Rosalie. She's been here forever, Lithuanian, and she would always start peeking as far as some of the work that we were doing. And then Rosalie comes over and she says, "Can I see what you're doing?" And I said, "Absolutely, Rosalie. I'm going to be your neighbor. I'm moving in." I let her inside the house. She almost starts crying. And she says, "My sister-in-law used to live here before she passed away." And she says, "I live across the street, but I have a building that needs complete renovations as well. My kids were born there. Can you go see the property? And I've been trying to fix it, but I'm too old. Would you buy it from me?" And I went, I took a look at the property. I loved it. I saw the possibilities as well. There was one of the 3 apartments that were renovated, but the other 2 needed a complete gut job. And she sold it to me. She was emotionally attached to the property because her kids were born there. And she wanted a lot of money for the property. And I told Rosalie, I said, "You're emotionally attached to the property. I can't afford this. Without thinking, I got to put about $80,000 into this property. And it's probably not going to be valued at what you're asking." So I told her I wasn't interested. She did her research. She did her homework. She came back and she told me that she's willing to sell me the property at the price that I had initially said, as long as I promised to fix it the way I fixed my property.
Oh, there you go. I was going to make a funny comment and then I just tore it down. No.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I had 2 flat in Woodlawn. It was a family property like for 60 years. And she came back and she saw what we did to it and she cried, dude. Like, and it was like, oh man, like it was all worth it. I tried selling it back to her. She couldn't get financing, but it was a good story up there. You used, that's awesome. You created your opportunity by doing just hard work and a good job. Somebody else saw it and you created your next deal. And that's kind of cool. I just want to dive in here. You used the term, you walked in to her property and you saw the opportunity. Like what we're talking, the word that keeps coming up, intuition. Like what do you see about the property? What are people supposed to catch when they're seeing opportunity on a property that maybe the normal person can't see?
You know what I mean? So a lot of it is old, right? There's huge potential. There's huge. It's a lot. So back of the yards, it's an old neighborhood. A lot of these houses are late 1800s to early 1900s. A lot of them are frame. A lot of these houses were built before plumbing was put in. So you almost need to completely renovate a lot of these properties. But if you get it cheap enough, you're able to put the money in. The opportunity that I saw, I said I could do the same thing that I did over here. A lot of the bare bones were already intact. I didn't have to go all the way down to the stubs. But I knew that for the three apartments, I'd be getting over $1,000 per apartment. So the money just made sense. The money made sense. Even the work that we had to put into it, it made financial sense. And it was close to where I'm at, so it'd be easy to manage. My father had a couple buildings that I was managing just in the area, so it was local. It was easy for me. I'm a pretty busy guy, so I wanted to stay. I wanted to have the properties and the apartments kind of near me.
A couple of the projects that I've worked on in backyards, the issue I found was these buildings, like you're saying, 1880s, 1920s, they're built more blue collar housing. Like they built and said, hey, we don't need to put plumbing in here. Like, so the retrofitting that went on over the next 40, 50 years. And the bedroom sizes were small. So a lot of times it requires you to almost reformat the entire thing, take it all the way down the side. So I imagine that's something you run into in the neighborhood a lot, right?
All the time. You know what? And there's a lot of these spaces have larger attics, and a lot of the time the attics were just used for storage. So I've renovated a lot of the attics and repurposed them, and you could always add another bedroom, maybe a bathroom up top. So I've loved putting the attics to use.
Got it. So you've mentioned rents a few times here. first to get 1,000 for a 1-bedroom. Talk to us about just the rent growth you've seen since 2017, right? And talk to us maybe some of the things that you pioneered of, hey, the first to get X.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's talk about first. So what was the rent back at the $23,000 purchase? What was those rents back then?
Yeah.
I mean, I showed Tom the building when I was born, my parents lived in, which I actually ended up purchasing that building a year and a half ago. But I found a rent receipt from for a 2-bedroom. Here, Mark, I'll ask you, what did a 2-bedroom in back of the yards go for in 1938?
I'd like 1938. I'd say like $24 or something like that.
I showed Tom the receipt.
Overpaying.
$8. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Now, that same apartment, when I renovate the building, I'm probably going to rent it for about $1,200. And I was talking to Ben Sussman, the guy that you had on recently, and he says that's a 16,000% increase.
He did the math. I love him.
So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's a lot of these things, and I've even seen on some of these renewals from like 2 or 3 years ago, it's like, oh, this is where this gets really powerful. It doesn't mean you should overpay today. It means you still need to be patient. But like the long game is there's patience in this, right? It's like planting a seed and growing a tree.
Absolutely.
So, but let's talk about some of these rents. Like, what have you seen? Like, talk to us about what they were 5 years ago and then what you're seeing today in some of your buildings.
Man, it's amazing. I've loved the people that come in. I've been blessed with the tenants that come in it. Like I said, if you provide a good quality product, people are going to come. And so from that point out, from the first apartment that I rented for $1,000, where a lot of my neighbors and even family were thinking I'm crazy, I haven't charged for anything under $1,000. And I've had a lot of tenants for a long period of time. So I gradually raised the rent. It makes financial sense for me. The mortgage is getting paid off, and then I get some. But a lot of the newer renovations that I just recently finished, the last property was a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, and I rented it for $1,300. And I think it's a hardwood flooring. It's a really nice property, and I know I could have gotten more then, and I definitely could get more now. I do have, I ended up purchasing a commercial property a couple of years ago, and I'm opening up a coffee shop on 47th and Honorary. And above there, I have a 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. And it's huge. It's a huge space. And I was blessed to rent it to a Latin Grammy nominated mariachi group. So 5 members of a mariachi group are up there. And I get $2,450 right now for that apartment.
Gosh. Hopefully there's no residential neighbors.
Practicing? Is this the...
Well, these guys are amazing. You guys wouldn't realize, in this, just a side note, there's a large growth of mariachi music here. There's Cesar Maldonado and Blanca Murillo have created the Mariachi Heritage Foundation. So they teach in CPS schools. They have grants where they teach mariachi music in CPS schools, and a lot of these kids are really good. So they've created a pretty good mariachi group. And I'm just blessed that 5 of the members live on top of soon to be the Dreamcatcher Cafe.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's awesome. Man, that's from a financial side, that's serious rent. $2,450 is a big. I know it's a big 5-bed, 2-bed, but that's a good chunk there.
That's huge.
I have an Instagram page, Beyond Legacy Homes, and now I showed the before and after photos of all of my properties, and yeah, that one was a lot of work, but I was really happy to get these guys there.
Yeah, we'll have to link to that in the show notes so everyone else can see that.
And you hinted at the coffee shop. I do want to talk about that, but before going there, let's talk a little bit about just doing these bigger rehabs and some of the mistakes that you've made, right? Because a lot of our listeners, they move into a building, maybe they do kitchens and baths, but the low-hanging fruit, the cosmetic, a lot of times people grow into having, all right, you know what, let's look at a gut, right? So you just off the bat jumped into it. What were some of the things that played Monday morning quarterback you'd say, all right, don't do that?
Well, you know what? I mean, there's something in me that I can't help myself, and I probably have issues with this. I feel like I love to provide a great product, right? And I'm still at that phase where maybe I overspent, and I probably now in retrospect I probably overspent in almost all of my projects. There's something in me where I want hardwood flooring everywhere. I remember reading an article where if you have hardwood flooring, the property value increases by about 15%. So I love the hardwood flooring. I put hardwood flooring on just about all of my apartments. The finance, I will say the biggest issue that I've had is finance, right? And eventually, if I keep doing what I've been doing, where I put more money into the properties that they're worth, well, you're going to run out of money. So that's kind of what happened with me. I told you I purchased a 6-unit building, the same building where my parents lived in when I was born, and it's just been sitting there because I don't have the money to fix that particular project. So going into and opening up a restaurant, commercial property, that's really drained me on a lot of finances as well. So I've had to stop one project to finish up the coffee shop. So I think one of the frustrations that I've had, big frustration, is that I haven't proven myself enough yet for a lending institution for them to give me the loans that I need to finish some of these projects. And according to them, the value is just not there yet. So, you know, I feel like I'm helping create a market in this community, and everything's expensive now. Everything's very expensive. So I've overspent on a lot of my properties.
So that's just to be careful on the words, like overspend or you overimprove in the sense of like, I think there's times when I've gone over budget, right? But spending that extra 20 grand or 10 grand is really just, it includes a handful of things I was going to have to do in the next 3 years. So I'm just kind of fast forwarding some of those expenses. Or I'm putting money in where I'm not going to get nickel and dime, where I decide like, we just got to rip out all the plumbing and get the copper in there because that's got nickel and dime me on a few $1,000s in work orders in the next couple of years. Like that sounds more like what you're doing is you're kind of just setting yourself up. I'm not trying to justify it, but there's going over budget because you miscalculated and you did it, but you're trying to overimprove, if anything, for the sake of the neighborhood, it sounds more like.
Well, that's part of it, yes. And then the other part is I don't want to be constantly having to go back and fix. I remember my dad was constantly every weekend, he's fixing something. And I'll tell you, I probably learned from his mistakes in that he was just jerry-rigged everything and not properly fixing it. And in the long run, we got to go back. And I think my time is very valuable. So I rather do a good job now. And I do believe that the way things are going, prices are going to continue to go up. So if I spend the money now, it's probably going to save me a couple of years down the line because everything's just material, and some of the costs are still they're going to continue to go up.
It's gone down now, but I remember when wood went up really high a couple of years ago, and everyone that put off that $15,000 porch, and then now the city came and tagged them, and they're paying $27,000 for that porch during that spike. Like that was a dramatic example of what you're saying.
Yeah. It's also kind of, this is one of the like side effects from everyone out there teaching, hey, this is how you bury your property, right? You try to get in for X amount and refi it all out. One of the side effects is people try to fit everything into that model. Well, here's my ARV, so what rehab can I do where I can pull out my money? Which that shouldn't be the way you go about things, right? You got to watch the rehab, you got to be careful, but you shouldn't try to back in that number if you're going to hold this thing long term. If you're flipping, yes, that makes complete sense. But when you're holding things, you can defer a few things, but you shouldn't be sacrificing just to say you were able to pull out 80%, 90% or whatever of the money that you put in on day one. Like we look too much at day one, right, of that refinance as opposed to what does this mean for a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year period if you're holding this long term.
No, I fully agree. And it makes sense, especially once I rent out the properties, it makes financial sense. Yes, I didn't have to spend in like other areas where you're at $400,000 or $500,000. I'm nowhere near any there on any of the properties. So, so when you're renting it out, you're getting extra income, more money in your pocket, and eventually, like I did with this particular property, I know the market will catch up, and then I'll either refinance or take out a line of credit and supplement the money that I initially put in.
I'm not going to beat this, but one more comment before we move on is I think we all come across when we're doing that rehab, that middle of the rehab where it's like, do I do this or do I not? And you really have to take it's really easy to look at your bank account, your budget, your promises you made to your partner, whatever it might be, and say, no, we can't do it. And that's almost the justification for not having a tough conversation or a tough reflection. But looking forward down the road, there's a lot of times I did I don't know if you call it the right thing, but I made the tougher decision to spend that $5,000 or put the new roof on or refinish the hardwoods when it's like, I'm already over budget and I wasn't planning on doing it. Like that next tenant that comes in, if you can get them to, if that tenant is a 5-year tenant versus a 2-year tenant, like that's usually where you're going to make up that money right there. Just all it takes is like kicking out a tenant one time, or maybe you get lucky. We've had tenants in place for 10, 12 years because we did a good job. So there's a lot of that long-term thinking you have to really do versus just kind of trying to not eat crow in the moment.
Well, keep in mind too, like we've been living in this bubble world where it's so easy to rent something right now. The last 2 years, you can put any product out there and it will rent because things are all out of whack still, right? But there's going to be a time in there usually is a time when the best products run quickly and the other people suffer, whether you do have to give concession, you do have to give a first month free, you do have to sit on market for 45 days. We're getting away with everyone gets away with that right now. That's not always the case. So if you're not differentiating yourself, when that time comes, like the person who did differentiate themselves is going to rent and their life will be easier than you're going to be struggling and grinding a little bit more on the lease up side.
One more comment, I promise that's it. But I think the other thing we've said that back of the yards is transform is changing. Your number one competition right now is the next guy that's doing a rehab down the street. I think this is true for the entire South Side, where there's always a new property that comes on the market. It's always going to be shinier than your lived in for 3 years one. So that's always what you're competing with. And if you didn't do something originally, you're going to have to do a turnover, which then will make that more of a painful turnover at that point.
Yeah, I'll give you a perfect example for that. I was running out of money, and I was choosing whether or not to develop the attic of one of the apartments. Do I add the stairway? Do I close up the attic and add another bedroom? And I was able to add about 300 square feet to the attic. And even my developer's like, dude, I see you're struggling. We don't have the money for this. You're going to save this, and then we'll just rent it out. We'll get it. At the time, I probably could have gotten about $1,100 for it. And I added the extra 300 square feet. It looks super nice. I added an extra bedroom. And I rented it for $1,300 because actually they waited for me 2 months to finish that particular product, that particular apartment. But I was so happy with it, and I even told my my developer Victor. I said, Victor, you see that smile when they came in and they loved this apartment? What was that worth? That was worth the money that we invested, and it increased the property value significantly as well. So,
yeah, appraisal definitely.
Yeah. So. Let's talk about what do you see for the future for Back of the Yards, and if you could even break it down by what sections within the neighborhood are you most bullish about?
There's a lot of developments that are coming to Back of the Yards. There's a lot of investments that they're being developed. There's new libraries. There's massive multi-million-dollar. There's a $55 million project that is being pushed at 46th and Ashland. Like a $24 million one on 47th and Justine. I'm seeing a lot of development. I'm looking at the surrounding areas. If you look at McKinley Park, you look at Canaryville, Ridgeport, you can't find anything for under $500,000 nowadays. And that's just the surrounding neighborhoods. So I tell everybody, I was telling a lot of people in this community, guys, don't leave, stick around, buy something, hold off. But I see a lot of development. There's issues that happens within the community as well when you have these new developments that come in as well. And I'm well aware of that. And we have a lot of conversation over some of the new developments that are coming in. But I really believe in this community. I think just about anywhere in Back of the Yards right now would be a good buy high, you can still get properties that are not developed at a cheaper price. And if I think if you put the work in, there's changes that are coming to the city as well. In back of the yards, we're having a lot of new immigrant population coming in. For the last 4 apartments that I rented to Venezuelan couples, and that's been amazing too. It's been amazing. It's worked out really well for me. So I don't know. I'd say anywhere back in the yards would be. There's certain blocks that we still have issues. There's still some violence, but overall, I think anywhere in back of the yards would be a good investment at the moment.
Well, how do you? Because I think there's other people out there that have influence in certain neighborhoods around the city that are facing this. Like, it's great that neighborhood changes, but it also causes a lot of problems, like you just touched on. Like, how are you influencing your friends, family, colleagues when it comes to stick around, don't leave, let's do this together? Like, what messages, like how are you calming their concerns about, I'll use the gentrification word, like things kind of really getting out of hand? Like,
well, you know what, I've been preaching, I've been talking about this for years, and I've seen from the law enforcement side, from working in catering trucks, I've seen the whole city and I've seen it transform, and I understand some people just want to leave because there's been issues here that traumatic issues that sometimes it's better to leave, right? And I understand that. I do fully understand that. But I've been preaching. You have to live through some of the tough times. There was, and I won't doubt that, or shun away from some of the violence that this neighborhood incurred. And we could talk about some of the reasons for that. But there's still good opportunities. It's still a great community. A lot of good people have moved in here. I will say that with the developments that are coming in, I would prefer that they would hire more local individuals from the community. There's a lot of talent here. It is sometimes frustrating when you have an outside developer come in and say, "Hey, we built this for you." And the way I've seen communities grow is we help build our own properties, our own communities with one another, right? So how do you work together rather than somebody coming in and say, "We built this for you"? So I would like more local developers, more local people to have access to some of the work that's being done in our community. And I think that would help out.
Well, that's a good segue to let's talk about the coffee shop here. So you after buying several buildings in the area, owning, operating them, you bought the commercial building. We mentioned we got the mariachi band paying a healthy amount up top. But talk to us about the Dreamcatcher Cafe. Why this? And then give us the scoop on what's going on there.
Sure. You know what? I feel like this community, like I said, there's a lot of Venezuelan people that are coming in, and I love them. And there's I think the Latin American culture is a coffee culture. You go, if you ever travel to Colombia, Mexico City, there's coffee shops everywhere. And then you come into a lot of these Hispanic neighborhoods and there's not many coffee shops. So I told you when I was a kid, I would go to work with my father and I served a cup of coffee in a catering truck. Every summer and every winter, I had my own catering truck before I went to the Marine Corps. So there was something in me that I always loved to serve a cup of coffee for whatever reason. And it helps us come together as a community, a place to sit, unwind, feel safe, feel relaxed. And I think it's important. And there aren't, 47th Street at the moment doesn't have any coffee shop. None. Back of the yards coffee shop closed down, but they're going to reopen 47th and Ashland. I know the owner, really good guy. I'm going to open mine on 47th and Honorary, and I think it's good for the community to have more options in our communities and more places for people to come in and unwind.
Good stuff. So when's this grand opening here? Are we close?
We're close. We're close. I finally secured a loan from Lakeside Bank to local bank. They believe in the project. That they're going to that we should close fairly soon. It'll help me finish up the project, get the equipment, and once I get that, I think about 2 months from there I'll be open.
Nice. What? Just give us a real quick. First time doing a storefront build out. Lesson learned, right? What would 1 or 2 pieces of advice you'd give someone who hasn't had to do this before?
Don't do it. I have no idea what I got myself in. Now, I was so far along. I'm like, well, I could build out a place. That's not that big of a deal, right? But oh my God, I put way too much money into it than I thought it was going to cost me. I had to pass by some other real estate deals that were available, but I'm close to the end now. It's a lot of work. I had this vision of opening up a coffee shop, and I remember serving a coffee as a little kid, but it's far more complicated than that. What kind of roaster are you going to use? What kind of, there's just a lot of things that are associated with it. I've been blessed. There's some great people that are coming. I still need a little bit of help, before I open up. So if there's any baristas out there or anybody that wants to manage a coffee shop, I need the help.
Hey, before we wrap, just want to touch on it. You brought it up, crime in the neighborhood. That's always something that's front and center on the papers, right or wrong, whatever reason. But talk to us about kind of the trends or how things, what anyone should know when it comes to the crime statistics in the neighborhood.
Sure. I'll say this. I think the worst is over. And this is just based off my experience, everything that I've seen. The worst is over. There's been a lot of just vacant properties, abandoned properties, and a lot of those properties are being redeveloped. I'll say somebody told me, a good friend of mine, 𝗦𝗁𝗏𝗄𝗏𝗃, he says, I love when you buy a property because at one point or another it was abandoned. You fix it, you put some cameras in front of it, and you bring safety to that particular space. And you've been doing it to every property that you've purchased. And I do. I brought some really good people. I had another police officer move into one of my apartments. I had a yoga instructor move into another. And I think when you bring a diverse mindset, it just helps out overall.
So, Mark, we're ready to wrap this?
We are ready to wrap. All right. We got 6 questions for you. What is your competitive advantage in back of the arts? How have you been able to do this while other people wish they could dominate a neighborhood like this?
You know what? I know the soul of my community. I know the drive. I know the hard work. I know what they've been through. I think I know the soul of a lot of the communities in my city. And I really see good things for back of the arts. And a lot of other people don't see that.
I think it's good stuff. What is one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first property here in Chicago?
You know what? Do it. Take a dive. I think it's a great market. You see what's happening throughout the West Coast, East Coast. Coming back of the arts, there's a lot of first-time home buyer incentives for a lot of people. So coming back of the arts and be my neighbor.
There you go.
Awesome. What do you do for fun?
Man, I'm a big domino player. I've competed in a world domino tournament. Play every Friday with my uncles, and I'll probably have a couple domino tables right outside the coffee shop.
That's cool. We better be invited to that grand opening, so don't forget us.
Absolutely. We're having a party there. This is that.
Yeah, I'd love it.
Give us either a good book, podcast, or self-development activity you'd recommend to our listeners.
Oh man, self-development. You know what? I've done Vipassans where I sat in silence for 10 days in format. So highly recommend, if you want to really dissect your brain, your thoughts, going inwards, meditate.
10 days, dude. I couldn't do like 30 minutes. Mark, like I feel like you're the same way as me. Like this would be a huge struggle for you.
See, I would love to do it, but my only thing that holds me back is like how many emails I got in my inbox. They're building.
See, that's the point.
If I knew I had nothing to worry about, everyone's got everything, nothing will drop. Like I would do it all day long. Like I just read that Living with the Monks one by whatever his name is, but like I could totally go to like a monastery and do that. Like that'd be awesome.
Living like a monk, great book.
Yeah, 𝗤𝗏𝗃𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 Besides yourself, name one person in your local network you'd highly recommend to other investors as a quality resource.
Oh man, you know what? You met him, Tom, 𝗏𝗟𝗃𝗏𝗃. He's another violent crime detective. He owns a bunch of properties in the southeast side. He's been doing this for quite a while. I don't know how many properties he's got, but him and his father, he's a retired police officer. They have a real estate company, a property management company, and great guy. I lean on him quite often.
Yeah, I met him for 10 minutes at your event, and he was busting my chops within a minute too. So that guy's awesome.
Difficult Southsider. Difficult Southsider, yeah.
Yeah. Once he found out I was from the north side, that was it. So, Ignacio, thank you so much. You provided a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I have my Instagram page, Beyond Legacy Homes. My website will be up and running by the time this airs. And come to coffee shop, Dreamcatcher Cafe. It'll be dreamcatcher.cafe as well. And you can find me on Facebook as well.
We will link to all that in the show notes.
Thank you.
All right, Mark, we got a Chicago fact. Who are we playing for?
We're playing for Clyde Rester out of Peoria. So a guy in Peoria bought a t-shirt. So that just makes me excited that someone far away but even knows who we are. So that's pretty cool. So Clyde, you're playing for the Chicago fact for a $50 gift card brought to you by renewable Financial. So hit it, Tom.
Side note on this too, I was at the Chicago multifamily meetup. 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝘁𝗄𝗏 and Jason Wagner did a great job there, but Boris was wearing our t-shirt. Rocking at the event that we, fresh from a week ago. So that was awesome.
He's awesome.
So, all right. So we've spoken exclusively about Back of the Yards. It's a great neighborhood. It is not one of Chicago's official 77 community areas. Back of the Yards is part of which? It lies within which Chicago community area? Part of the official 77. And Mark gets first shot at this. Is it Washington Park, New City, Fuller Park, or Armour Square?
New City.
New City. You got it. You guys just sitting there nodding. I'm not even going to ask him. I know he knew that one.
No.
Would you have known it without the guesses?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. They would have. No one ever uses New City. You always know like the real estate agents that only been like in Chicago for 5 years. They'll use it because they pull up on the map. But like,
if I would have put Canaryville as an option, which is not one of the 77, would that have tripped you up?
No. I mean, so let me ask you a question. Does anyone use New City like in the neighborhood? Like
we have issues with when they change the names, and we don't like it. Nobody over here likes it. We're very proud. I grew up here, and we had rivalries with Canaryville, Bridgeport, and Back of the Yards, and I kind of loved all of it. So yeah, we don't want to be lumped in together in any way, I guess.
I feel like the name was almost just a kind of All right, Ignacio, awesome show. Tom, awesome. Listeners, you have to go on our straightupchicagoinvestor.com and sign up for the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit that's in UIC May 6th and 7th. This is the third time they're doing it. They haven't done it for a couple of years because they took off for COVID, but awesome event. You get to hear awesome speakers like me and Tom, but we're just kind of the amateurs there. There'll be people that are way better than us. So great event, worth every dollar, worth your time. It's a weekend you'll have to take, but it will be worth it. So thank you, Ignacio. Thank you, Tom. Listeners, thank you as always, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks all.
Thank you, guys.